Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. It's been a pretty quiet week for me personally in EVE Online, and I must say the only thing that I noticed that felt a bit special, that could be cool, is a tweet from Wingspan where he showed 3 propaganda tower-like structures. I'm not sure where he got it from. I did go to CC to take a look there, but I didn't find anything. Still, sounds pretty interesting. So we can expect ML and XL propaganda towers to be in development at CCP at some point. That is definitely something that I personally am looking forward to. And it's a nice little tidbit that might incentivize us to invest in that PI, of course, because that's the pattern that we know from all other structures as well. And so on that one, I feel pretty certain that it's going to use the classical advanced PI materials in order to construct those structures. When, where, how, none of that is available, but definitely a little teaser that is showing that it's on its way at some point. Next up, let's take a quick look at the new Eden store here. So we've got no sales, but we do have the Imperial Jubilee skins that are here now for even more ships. And I must say, if I were an Amar pilot, I'd be very tempted because these do look very cool. On the Ark, on the Avatar, of course, I think it's one of the best looking skins on the Avatar with the dark front and then the gold at the back, but also Apocalypse and the Apocalypse Navy issue look very cool in that. You have a Confessor skin as well. There, look at that Damnation. So tempted. It looks really good on that. And then the Oracle as well. That looks absolutely amazing. Anything else that pops out here that, feels maybe a little bit dark, could use a bit more gold on the Abaddon, in my personal opinion. But yeah, it's a skin that's been brought back, if I'm not mistaken, and brought back for even more ships now that the Amar are close to their celebration again. So yeah, nothing too special on the sales front, but definitely an awesome looking skin for Amar loyal pilots. Next up, let's dive in there, then let's get in on some plex and stuff, and we'll get started at 245. Like that, and here we go for plex in Jita itself. You can see 3.1 million for the sellers, almost 3.1 million for the buyers as well. Going to the player owned trade hubs, competition actually starts above Jita 4.4 for the latest sell orders, which are very recent. So we actually have a bit of a drive down in the last few minutes for plex here. I think that these will basically get snatched up very quickly. And so we can see that the player-owned trade hubs with the more significant volumes are starting at more than 3.1 million for plex. And on the buyer side, we are talking, still very close to 3.1, just below that. You can clearly see now the trend as well for plex after the bottom, which was in early August. 2.75 million was definitely possible. We are now back well above 3 million, and I think unless a sale or something like that happens, we are here to stay for now. And if again CCP can come out with some exciting stuff for the winter expansion or winter itself, some of those releases, then of course we could be on our way up to a new high. That is usually the pattern that we see. It's still very visible here. December, a peak of 3.4 million ISK. So is this the right time to buy? No, of course you're a little bit late on this downtrend. Is where I would have bought. Anything below 3 million is still something that you could have considered there, but at this point I do think you're a little bit late. For the multiple pilot train certificates, very similar chart, of course, bit of cresting at the tail end here at 1.25 billion ISK, bottom at around 930, actually an early bottom in April as well, where we broke 900 million, but currently selling for 1.250 billion ISK in Jita, and around Jita buyers coming in at almost 1.2 billion ISK. That's definitely a very fast increase in price that is stalling here at the end. We'll have to see in the upcoming weeks what happens there, but you can see on the volumes that nothing too major is happening on the sales front. So if, in my opinion, plex continues to rise, then inevitably we'll see the trading certificates follow suit as well. For the skill extractors, obviously very close to the plex chart as well, except at the tail end even more volatility on the upswing. So here early August we have a bottom at 310 million on the chart, now already selling for 353 million, buyers coming in at 344. You're already looking at a pretty nice profit potentially. But take a look at this here. The top in December at 390 million is looks pretty nice as well, of course. So if you have the patience, honestly, I would wait for what CCP has in store for us, and then the winter would be my horizon for a bit of dumping, a bit of profit taking. For these skill injectors next, let's start with this large skill injector. This is definitely unusual, not what I would personally expect, but we have a continued move horizontally at a bottom price of just above 700 million ISK. So we've got 707 million for the sellers, and we have 688 million for the buyers. Pretty narrow margin, but looking at the entire 1 year chart here, this would be considered a buy opportunity. The real weird thing is, of course, that through August, September, as plex and the skill extractors have been increasing in price, it has actually been decreasing in price, and it is now staying at this bottom price. Feels a bit weird, it feels a bit off, and so I would definitely understand if you're hesitating to make large purchases of large scale injectors. Personally, I think buying a couple of these at 700 million makes sense. You can see that the 800 million potential does exist on the chart, and I personally see no reason why skill points in the future may not see more demand, and then the increased price of plex and extractors should eventually translate in higher skill injector prices as well. But I would definitely be careful with the volumes on this one. For the small skill injectors, same thing, bit of a bump at the tail end, but that's only because today's median price still has to be set, but landing at 140 million ISK, 142 for the sellers, 138 for the buyers. I think you can still grab some small skill injectors for less than 140 million ISK. Let's look at the top here, 170. Is definitely possible, so that's the investment to make. But again, it feels a bit off that in this period where we actually declined to the bottom, plex actually increased in price. That's the one thing that's a little bit weird, that would make me a bit wary of trying to grab this bottom at this point. For the daily alpha injector next, here we have a normalization that is probably driven by the increased price for plex as well, up to 62 million on the chart, and we're talking 60 million for the sellers, 53 million for the buyers. Healthy margin between these two, but definitely back to an above average price for the sellers at this point. Next up, let's talk a bit about the minerals at 8.15. Like that, as always, we'll start with titanium, and after a bit of a bump we are back on our 5 ISK again for yesterday and the day before that as the average price. So we obviously have lost all the gains that were made through the Imperium War when the Excel citadels were being blown up left and right. We managed to reach 7.5 ISK, but now we're back at 5. Let's actually put the filters back on for the sellers at least. 532 for the sellers, 504 for the buyers. Still above 5 ISK, which is, well, okay, I guess, but it's just no more than an average price at this point. Maybe a touch above average on the sellers, and it's not the great price that we had in the last couple of weeks. Well, couple of months, you could almost say here. Peaked in mid-August, something like that. Yeah. But I'm a bit surprised here. Well, actually, it's maybe not that surprising. We went up to 7.5 ISK, and look at the volumes, they're definitely down. So I think that basically people were willing to ride out this storm, to wait if they needed titanium, to wait for better prices. And so it does also show that there will have been quite some competition to try and sell at these awesome prices. And so maybe you ended up stuck with that titanium. But now it's still 5 to 5.3 ISK, so I would say that it's still definitely okay for titanium mining, just not the best of times anymore. Next up we have our pyrite, and that's where the bad news starts. Here we go, next 1 year low point heading for 3.5 ISK on a median daily price. That is quite depressing. We bumped up just a touch from that, but 3.9 ISK for the sellers, 376 for the buyers, and the volumes are still there. 2 billion units coming in at less than 4 ISK for pyrite. Obviously majorly oversupplied, and we're breaking the balance again. We're heading for 3.5 ISK. At least we're teasing that from time to time. Very weird situation. I do wonder if CCP at some point is going to jump on that and do something about that. Although, again, as I've said, really low mineral prices mean really inexpensive Tech 1 ships, which is definitely accessible for alpha clones as well, and means that you get to lose ships left and right by trying out the PvP part of EVE Online if you want to, without having to do a major grind to get it back. So easy minerals, easy ships. What needs to follow though is the lots of destruction, or you get this chart here, just a 1 year downtrend and a bottom price at this point. Next up we have Mexelon continuing towards 65 ISK, which I would put at a below average price. 65 for the first seller, 61.02 for the first buyer. This is where I would personally start to hesitate when it comes to selling Mexelon, and I would personally hold on to it for a better price, better times. And here again, less visible bump in August with the war happening in Nullsec, but we had to give all of that back, and now we are back to even less than normal prices in my opinion. 65 to 70 is the average. 70 actually the average I would aim for, so we're definitely below that, and yeah, not a great time for minerals right now. Next up we've got Isogen, and that is unbelievable. After a full year of going from 50 ISK down to less than 30 ISK, here is the leg down to less than 20 ISK. So people like here that must have bought a decent amount of Isogen in order to get that volume spike up there, probably as an investment. You can see that there's just so much available that it made no difference on the price itself, and now at the tail end the market just said screw it, there's so much Isogen here, we don't need it anymore at any price, and now it's selling for less than 20 ISK, and buyers are coming in at less than 19 ISK. That is really crazy to see after like a full year after the changes to mining ships. Basically a full decline that started earlier than this down, and then we see another breaking point, breaking through 25 and then just straight through to less than 20 ISK for Isogen at this point. Super cheap, but always risky with the investments, of course, because there are no reasons on the horizon to say that this will change, that there will be new mineral dumps that are coming to the game. Noxium next, also breaking back through the 300 barrier, and we've seen that before, right? The whole year where 300 has been defended by the market quite vigorously. Then all of a sudden in June we break through down to 250. Bit of a comeback on the war, but now I think we are on our way to a 250 to 300 move very quickly. 291 for the sellers, 265 for the buyers. It's only a matter of time until 250 comes in play again, unfortunately. Then we've got Zydrine, even more bad news. You can clearly tell now that there is more supply, more calmness throughout New Eden, so people are mining quite a lot, and as a result, yeah, prices just keep declining. Here is Zydrine dropping straight through the 500 barrier, and in the last month heading for 400 ISK. It's 447 for the sellers, 406 for the buyers, so still a pretty wide margin, and yeah, any fresh supply just keeps crashing that price further. Megasite, I was trying to defend, I'm not sure what price that would be, but 575, something like that, I think, for a couple of months now, has also given up and is in fact breaking through the 500 barrier. 480 for the sellers, 467 for the buyers. Not a great week for minerals because lots of backs have been broken, and one that I'm not sure how it can keep supporting all of that pressure, but even Isogen going to another 1 year low is well, quite unexpected, because you would expect normally that Isogen should be more expensive than Mexelon, but yeah, basically losses across the board, lower prices across the board. That is what happens when you're in a calmer period in a nullsec. Next up, we have our PI at, let's say 14:55. No, let's say 15 minutes. That makes it a nice and round timestamp. And let's get started here. Let's see if that bit of a jump up here for the broadcast nodes. Interesting, some volume spikes as well. I do wonder if people will start to get prepared now for a possible structural release. It's still 2.1 million for the sellers, 2,050,000 ISK for the buyers. Still quite affordable for sure, and nothing too crazy basically on the broadcast nodes, but a little bump here in the last couple of days that might signify increased interest from the investors. The construction blocks were at a low point and basically bounced off of the 10,000 ISK mark. Sellers are up to almost 12,000 ISK, buyers are still at 10,000 ISK. Honestly, if you're looking for that PI investment but you don't want to spend millions, you know, your means are a bit more limited, then construction blocks seems pretty interesting. Buy close to 10,000 ISK, it's below the entire chart, and I do think that we can expect that to make a comeback at least at some point. It's very much a good market for trading if you have, I would say, a medium horizon at this point. And god damn it, my ear is acting up a little bit. All right, let's keep going. Here are the consumer electronics landing at 12,500 ISK, basically just an average. 13,330 for the sellers, 12,600 for the buyers. We've got coolants next, which is the fuel related. God damn it. Sorry about that, guys, but yeah, had a bit of beeping in my ear there. That was quite annoying. It's in fact still there. Is it my headset? I'm gonna go with the headset half on here. So coolants close to 1 year high point, above 11,000 ISK on the chart. And we are talking 11,400 ISK for the sellers, which is a well above average price, a great price for coolants, even historically speaking, before the changes to the moon passes, where we could basically say that we had lots of fuel demand that had to be recovered. This was a well above average price here, 11,400. Great time for coolants to sell. 10,800 for the buyers as well, which is quite expensive. I would say that buyers would usually hover around 10,000 ISK and sometimes even be below that. So gas planets, coolants, very easy to produce, very easy to bring to the market, and a really nice price at the moment. Enriched uranium staying at 12,500 ISK. It's definitely harder to make, so you get that bit of premium on coolants, but 12,800 for the sellers and 12,000 for the buyers. Definitely a very nice price as well. Next up, we've got the integrity response drones, and that is interesting. Look at that, exact opposite for the broadcast nodes. We actually have a bit of a dip here at the tail end to 2.3 million on the chart, and yep, less than 2.5 million for the sellers, 2.3 million for the buyers. If we look at this entire chart, except for a December slump to 2.25 million, we've not seen such low prices for the entire year. So here, integrity response drones, try to buy them close to 2.3 million. I think you won't be disappointed when the next set of structures come out that use advanced PI materials. No guarantees, no absolute guarantees on that, but the pattern, as I've said with the propaganda towers, does seem to indicate that that will be the case. I think there's a very high chance for good investments to be made here. Mechanical parts, fuel related, selling for a bit less than 12,000 ISK, apparently a bit more than that, 12,100 ISK for mechanical parts, 11,500 ISK for the buyers. Bit of a wider margin than coolants, but a bit of a better price on the sellers as well, and very easy to make as well, guys. Barren planets, that's all you need, and you can start churning out mechanical parts and bringing those to the market. So awesome price, well above average for fuel related PI materials. Nuclear reactors continues a slow increase in price, is now substantially above 100,000 ISK, 106,500 for the sellers, 95,000 for the buyers. So as a result, we've got this diminished volatility. We'd love to see spikes like this, but people that did buy on these low points for around 80,000 ISK can consider taking some profits now that we're at 106. If you have more patience, I personally am going to hold on to my investment myself. Next up, we've got organic mortar applicators. These are a bit of pressure at the tail end, but definitely not at the 1 million low point just yet. 1.1 million for the buyers, 1.5 million for the sellers is 1.1, 1.5 for the buyers there. Okay, if you want to make the investment, at least have the patience for a buy order. Next up, we've got the robotics, and that is the first canary in the coal mine for the fuel-related PI materials that the good times may not last for all that much longer, because we are breaking through the 100,000 ISK barrier on the downside, and robotics is fuel-related. Still 100,000 for the sellers, but 97,000 for the buyers. And apparently, if we look at this chart, it's the buyers that are winning out at the moment. So be a little bit careful when it comes to mechanical parts, coolants, and enriched uranium. It looks really great, definitely a nice time to sell, but robotics is showing that the market may be about to turn. Next up, we've got the self-harmonizing power cores continuing to hover above 2 million ISK. Buyers are at a bit above 2 million ISK, so this is still the same situation. Okay to slowly buy, nothing too pronounced as a buy opportunity. Superconductors next, continuing to hover around 12,000 ISK, bit above, bit below there. Nothing too special in my opinion. 11,000 for the sellers and 11,000 for the buyers, so that's just one sell order. So you could say 11.6 to 11,900 ISK for the sellers. That's about an average price, and then 11,000 for the buyers. That's maybe a touch below average, but nothing too special here. Test cultures continuing to be pretty low on average here. 8,400 for the sellers, 7,500 for the buyers. This is, well, just like with construction blocks. If you look at this entire chart here, we're at a low point. Test cultures, if you look at this entire chart, 9,000, 10,000, 11,000 is possible. We're now buying this for 7,500 ISK, definitely at the lower end as well. And then we've got the wetware mainframes that jumped up a little bit. A low point would have been around 2.1 million, I think. Currently selling for 2.4 million, buyers at almost 2.2 million. So nothing too drastic there, and still some opportunities from time to time. If I'm not mistaken, this chart looked good. In the advanced PI materials, fuels are higher than average by a lot, but first signs of that changing may be here. And for the rest, we've got a bit of a mixed picture with obvious buy opportunities in, for instance, the construction blocks, and in my opinion, test cultures as well. Interesting time for PI, of course, as new announcements may have a major impact on this category, especially when it comes to structure stuff. Next up, the advanced moon materials at 22.55. Like that. Let's take a look at these crystalline carbonites. Extremely stable at a less than average price. 159.85, so less than 160 for the sellers, 148 for the buyers, less than 150. Again, if you're looking for that carbonite investment, this still looks okay. It's definitely a below average price, but it is very stable for a long time. I would say, yeah, small incremental buys make a lot of sense. On war activity, we'll probably see this turn around. We've got the Fernite carbide that has landed at 150. Definitely a pretty low price at this point. 156 for the sellers, 149 for the buyers. There is one thing that I should note though. The pattern, if you look at minerals, oversupplied, which means lots of moon mining. If you look at fuels, PI has made their comeback and actually are selling a bit above average, which to me indicates lots of demand, which to me indicates lots of active refineries across New Eden. And that all, of course, translates to a lot of moon materials being created in the game as well, which may be the major reason why we're seeing these lower prices. And then the real question is, I personally have not really heard that moon refineries are major targets in wars at the moment. So if that's not in the meta, be careful with what I just said and speculating on higher prices on any nullsec war to happen. There's basically a huge amount of supply out there, which does make for these lower prices to be normal. And something that may not turn around on just any spark in nullsec or anything like that, because it's not entirely dependent on nullsec anymore, and minerals fuels do indicate that there's just basically lots of moon mining activity happening, and so this may not be a bottom price, a less than average price or anything like that. It may actually be closer to a new normal price, which should eventually then also of course translate to cheaper Tech 2 ships. So those are the parameters to watch out for, in my opinion, if you're looking to make those advanced PM material investments. So I would be careful, but here for Ferrite Carbide, the chart landing at 150. If you look at the rest of the chart, is quite interesting. Buyers are just below that, so that's definitely another one that you could start buying if you're tired of buying crystalline carbonite. Next up, we have the titanium carbides, not at 150 yet, but definitely heading for the lower end as well. 185 for the sellers, 177 for the buyers, and you've got 29 million coming in here, another 29 million coming in here. Have almost that all of this in the last 24 hours. I think we'll see more pressure. If we ever get this to 150, that is definitely a low price that we should jump on. But for now, this looks to be a very similar pattern to the rest as well, a landing on the lower end of the chart. And then we've got the tungsten carbide that needed a bit more of a downtrend, and it's actually doing so quite volatilely, heading for less than 200 ISK on average. Sellers already at less than 200, 179 for the buyers on this one. With this volatility, with the previous bottom at 175, I would say be careful of catching a falling knife. Don't jump in too soon. Yeah, this one here seems a lot healthier to get started on, in my opinion. And then for tungsten carbide, it's a bit of a gamble. Can we get to 150 on this one as well? The rest of this chart indicates no, but who knows if my theory holds up, that we are talking general more supplies across the board, easier supplies across the board, more being produced through moon mining, including high-sec moon mining, wormhole space moon mining. Then who knows, maybe all of this could normalize to 150 across the board. Next up, we have the metamaterials. Here are the photonic metamaterials staying at 20,000 ISK. That's quite average. 20,000 for the sellers, 19,500 for the buyers. So I think we'll basically need some time for the first category to move and to show itself on the metamaterials category. For plasmionic, same thing, staying just above 20,000 ISK. There's really not much to say there. Non-linear metamaterials breaking through, but also from 30,000 ISK, so inexorably going down now to 25,000 ISK. The real question is, can we get to 20? I don't think so. If you look at the moment at what the others are doing, they're basically staying on their average price. And so for non-linear metamaterials, 25,000 would make sense. Sellers are still coming in at 27,800. Buyers though, 25,100, where I think we'll land eventually. And then we have the terahertz metamaterials for Amar actually jumping up, showing some volatility after that quick downtrend to almost 21,000 ISK. 25,000 for the sellers now, 22,500 for the buyers. The first one that shows some volatility, a nice uptick here all of a sudden after a very nice decline as well. We didn't reach 20,000 on the chart, which would have been a very strong indication that we should be buying, but it was definitely a massive pullback that has jumped back up all of a sudden. Interesting. First volatility, also something to note, I think. Next up, we have the rest of the advanced moon materials. I think here we've got, for instance, the fermionic condensates continuing the slow decline from, well, high prices, of course. 110,000 ISK. 100 plus has been there for almost 6 months or something like that. Now 98,000 for the sellers, 95,000 for the buyers. This I think is also an indication that it is quieter in Nullsec. You've got more production happening, and so we get this pressure on the price. Ferrogel, same pattern, except that it's accelerating here to 45,000 ISK, which is already an average price for Ferrogel, 45,000 for the sellers and 41,000 for the buyers. If we look for that on the chart, that's around here. Starting to be interesting. This is definitely a serious downtrend that has some momentum. The real question, of course, is can you time the bottom? Is this the right time to make a move already at 41,000? It could be. It could definitely be if you have the patience for a buy order. But interesting one, showing that pressure again, but this time quite quickly. Next up, we've got the fuller rights, very same thing, continuing to slowly decline, now breaking through 1,000 ISK, sellers coming in at 986, buyers at 910. 910 on the chart is around here. We've been lower, but not by too much, so this is also starting to look interesting for a buyer's perspective. Hypersynaptic fibers, same pressure showing up. This one is stalling though at 13,500 ISK. So here we've got a bit of hesitation on the market. It's not as good as Fullerite and Ferrogel, but these two, man, I like him. We've got the nano transmitters next, also going down 5,000 ISK on the chart, but breaking through that at the tail end. We're talking 4,800 for the sellers, 4,500 for the buyers, which is around here on the chart. So still not the bottom, but definitely a nice pullback compared to the last 6 months. Phenolic composites, look at the pressure again and the acceleration as well, going down towards 2,500 ISK. We're looking for 2K as a definite low. We're not there yet, but give it a couple of weeks, it might definitely happen. And then ceramic fibers, same thing here. Obvious pressure and very hard to say what a bottom is going to be here. So buyers are coming in at 423. Still a bit of support for the ceramic fibers. I would say that Ferrogel and Fullerite look more interesting for investments at the moment, but very interesting situation in my opinion, where you have lots of these other advanced wood materials than the carbides and the metamaterials that are showing that pressure, and some of them are accelerating quite rapidly with interesting buy prices at the moment. Next up, we have the Tech 2 ships at 31.45. Let us see if that is starting to show through. Of course, all of that pressure on advanced wood materials. Does that mean that we have lower prices? Well, we've got the changes. Well, I'll take a quick look actually now at industry, because I don't know. So we've got some minerals, and okay, so you do have items that will then require exactly what we just saw here as part of the production process for these Tech 2 ships. So yeah, all of these lower advanced wood material prices should mean lower prices for Tech 2 ships as well. And for the Aries here, we actually do have a massive break with the average prices selling for less than 27 million, buyers coming in at 22 million. Of course, if the Aries is the interceptor that loses its interdiction, it's not necessarily the normal market activities here that are driving the price down. So I think for here, looking at the larger ships will give us a better idea. Something like the Basilisk is definitely starting to move towards a less than average price of around 240 million for the sellers, 223 for the buyers. Pretty cheap, nothing too out of the ordinary though. Cerberus, that one is interesting. 1 year low point and actually a data point at less than 200 million ISK, 206 for the sellers and 189, almost 190 million for the buyers. Very cheap for the Cerberus. It's a great ship as well. Even for exploration. In fact, one of the only Caldari, this is a bit of a spoiler for one of the upcoming videos, but one of the only real options for Caldari when it comes to combat exploration. So very, very cheap, 1 year low. That is very interesting. I would say if you're looking for a Tech 2 purchase right now in a decently good sized price, 200 million range, look at the Cerberus, try to grab it for less than 190. If you look for that on the charts, 190, come on, show up. It's here. that we are buying at the moment, if you look at this entire 1 year chart, that is definitely very, very interesting. The claw next also crashing to less than 25 million ISK, but of course we know that the claw is losing its interdiction, so here it's definitely you know, an upcoming change that is driving this price back down. Still 22.6 million for the buyers is pretty damn cheap. People do think that they'll basically become useless now. The crow is going to go to less than 30 million ISK, but is still, you know, strong demand here, 29.1 million for the buyers, and I'm guessing that this one will still be an interdiction ship, so still paying 30 million there, no massive break visible. The Crusader, yeah, pretty obvious here as well what's happening with that one on the rebalance patch next month, which drives the price to a little bit of 20 million, basically 22.5 for the buyers, 27 for the sellers. Next up, we've got the Guardian. You can see here, I think, the pressure for the moon materials going towards 230, so 222 for the sellers, 238 for the buyers. Nothing too pronounced, but obviously also a bit of pressure after the August spike, which is the war spike. The Heretic, that one is breaking through the 70 million mark, selling for 69 million, buyers coming in at less than 65 million. Nobody's buying Heretics at the moment, which is quite interesting. So if you try to generate 65 million on the chart, that's here. Just like with the Cerberus, I would say, yeah, one Heretic at this price point, wait for some action in nullsec and then try to sell it at some profit. Don't buy 100 of them, of course, you know, don't decide to buy up everything that's below 70 million or anything like that. I think that that's a very big mistake if you look at these volumes, but try to snag a buy order close to 65 million. I think that does make sense. I think you'll have more chance with the Cerberus, but who knows? That is definitely a nice runoff here on the Heretic chart. If you're looking for buy opportunities, continued pressure on the Hound here towards 25 million ISK, 26 million for the sellers, 23 million for the buyers. Lowest point in a year, I would say. Definitely something to consider as well. Grab a couple of Hounds close to this price and wait for volatility to come back. Next up, we've got the Ishtar. That is also going for a 1 year low point. Buyers at 225. Not bad at all. Manticore, same pattern, but landing at 30 million ISK, 29 million for the buyers. I personally would be a bit more hesitant. The Hound is much more pronounced, right? Buying at 23 million. That's right here. So the Manticore, you can see the pressure, but not, in my opinion, as good a purchase. Nemesis, also chart heading for 25 million, buyers coming in at 24 million. You know, Nemesis, Hound, those are the ones that I'd be looking at. The Oneros is staying above average, actually. 241 for the sellers, 222 for the buyers though. Yep, the buyers are starting to go lower, but it's still the sellers that are dictating the price here. And then we've got the Purifier, obviously going to 1 year low point as well, heading for 25 million on the chart. Lack of demand, 25 million for the buyers. This is really the gamble that you have to take. Do you think that this winter there will be enough action to drive the price back up like some of these other spikes have managed to do? Or do you think that the stability, especially in moon mining, that is becoming so ubiquitous, is here to stay? And are we going to start to basically move for the stealth bombers, for instance, in the 25 million to 30 range, and that we won't really break out of that anymore? That's really the question that I think you have to ask yourself when it comes to Tech 2 investments. As I always say, don't put all your ISK in a single basket. So I would definitely not blame you if something like a Cerberus, I think that looks very interesting. The Hound, that looks very interesting as well. But keep in mind what we are seeing in Moon Materials. What we're seeing as the whole story here is definitely a lot of supply coming online at the moment. The Raptor also breaking through 30 million at this point, and in fact buyers at less than 25 million ISK. If we try to generate that on the chart, buyers are here on the chart, which is also the lowest we've seen for an entire year. So, you know, it's a difficult choice to make, because this is obviously a very massive break with the trend all of a sudden across the board. The Saber selling for less than 70 million, 64 million on the buyers. A bit too early, in my opinion, to make the jump on this one, but definitely interesting as well. Scimitar, these logistics ships are still doing a bit better, but also obviously now average price less than 230, buyers at 205 million, sellers at 221. All you can say here is it's definitely below average as well, compared to the rest of the year. The question is, will that last? The Stiletto doing a bit of a jump after reaching 29 million, jumping back up. So that's kind of a weird one. 30 million for the sellers, 29 million for the buyers. I'm guessing that if you're looking for interceptor fleets, people will be considering the Stiletto. Micro updrive, yeah, projectile turret bonus. Maybe that's what's going to replace the claw fleets after the balance change. And then we've got the Taranis that is being forgotten to 20 million ISK here, 19.5 million for the buyers. But yeah, if it loses its interdiction, I do think it will completely be lost to the meta, and that CCP will have to do something for these, I would call them combat interceptors, in order to make them more viable than faction frigates. So that's why they're dropping off like a rock, which again also makes them maybe very interesting, because if CCP does decide to do something about that, if they say that, well, Tech 2 ships should be better or more used at least than what we're seeing now, then this might be an incredible purchase, of course, for the long term, when eventually CCP might do a redesign of these interceptors to bring them back a little bit. So yeah, difficult choices to make this week, I think, for the Tech 2 ship market. Let's move on to Tech 3 then at 4030. 4030. Oh, and I actually have not written down anything for the extra products. Oh, that could be interesting. Let's do that. There we go. So Tech 3, let's get started on that. As always with the destroyers, we can see the continual pressure from that oversupply spectre, in my opinion, that does exist in the Tech 3 market. So despite moving in the 30 to 35 million range, which is super low, we're still seeing pressure on the market. And the reason is that you've got like 600 of them on the market at 33.5 million. Competition moves from there, and the buyers, well, if they have patience, they can drive the price close to 30 million ISK. Buying here, sure, have the patience to try and buy for less than 31 million ISK. Don't buy crazy volumes to upset this, in my opinion, and keep in mind that you might be able to buy for even less than 30 million ISK if this keeps going and is still showing up across the board. So then we get the Hecate. Look at that pressure again, going back down. Let's see here, 37.5 million, 74 of them that are being placed there. So that's quite a lot, 35 million for the buyers. I think this is going to start to put even more pressure on this. Look for 35 million pretty soon on the chart. Next up, we've got the Jackdaw, also drop off to 35 million. Same thing on 369 being listed at 35 million. That's the oversupply that I was talking about. There's hundreds of those ships slogging around in the market, not finding buyers. Anything new that's being produced is being brought in, competing with that price. And the buyers, well, sometimes they're impatient. Jackdaw still at 33.2 million. But if we lose just a couple of them, they're definitely buying close to 30 million ISK, so that's here on the chart. I would say for Jackdaw, for Hecate, look at that pressure, have that patience. We just need to lose all of these guys, and then we've got 30 million as well. Looking at the Confessor, looking at the general numbers of supply, I think it's possible. I think it's something that will potentially still play out like that. Then we've got the Zweepel finally. Look at that drop off here yet again, 30 million almost coming into play, because as I've just said, man, this was not prepared, but 420, 43, 26 competing at 32 million ISK. That's just the biggest number that we've seen there on a single sell order. And once the buyers drop out, 30 million, it's just 6 of them that are still being bought at above 30 million, then it's 27 million. If this gets done, that's when you've got to make a move. That's when you got to try and grab a couple of Zweepels for less than 30 million, of course. But yeah, lack of demand, crashing down of the price, 1 year low point all of a sudden for this Zweepel. And this is partly the culprit, of course. 500 of them in the latest sell orders for 32 million and less is quite hard to do. But despite the fact that all of this is here, you still have 369 Jackdaws here. You still have couple hundred equities as well, and you still have 500-600 confessors on the market as well. It's that oversupply spectre that is putting pressure on everything, and so waiting for the right time. Svepel might be right now, might be just get rid of these 6, wait for that, and hope for that's a definite. That's when you gotta make that move. If you can grab Svepels for 28 million, look at the potential at 45 million. That's an incredible purchase. That's the name of the game in Tech 3 at the moment. And what I was fearing as well, right? It always looked like, oh, 35 million, all right, a bit below that. Look at that, nice 33 million buy opportunity, nice 35 million buy opportunity. Nope. Be patient. This is the pattern that I was personally waiting for. If we lose this buy order, that's when I'm putting up my own buy orders. Next up, we've got the cruisers. Here is the Legion, also soft landing at 140. That's the numbers that are there. The competition starting from here. There are still some buyers out there, but it's only at 131 million ISK. Honestly, 131 around here on the chart. Definitely okay for the Legion. Note that the Legion is still in the meta as well. Legion fleets do fly in nullsec, so this could actually be an okay one in my opinion to jump on even now. Next up, we've got the Loki. Let's take a look at the chart here, dropping off to 159, close to 1 year low point, 160 for the sellers, 156 for the buyers. Volumes here 468 to 19, which is again that oversupply competition starting from there. There is still some demand for that, but it is also at a 1 year low point. So here, wouldn't blame you to buy one of the Loki, one of the Legion, maybe a couple. Don't buy a dozen. Have the patience for the same pattern to happen in the cruisers as the confessors, but those two definitely already look quite interesting. Proteus, same pressure being shown here. 360, 62 now being relisted at 130 million. If they're gonna, that's exactly why you gotta be a little bit careful with the Legion. Who knows if those guys get impatient and release that at like 139, put more pressure on this. That can definitely happen. And so the Proteus here, I think competition is gonna start down from 130. It's 127 for the buyers, which is definitely below the entire chart, but can we lose a couple? Yeah, close to 120. If that happens, it's just 3 buy orders, it's just 9 Protei when there's 400 of them up here. I think that can happen, and that then you've got that same Svepel opportunity potentially. Those are like those definite, all right, grab a couple at this price, you're gonna make a profit when the spike does happen. No doubt about that. That's personally what I would be waiting for, but Legion 131. Look at this chart, it's a great chip. A couple does make sense as well. And then finally we've got the Tengu also reaching a 1 year low point at 130 million. In fact, selling again that pattern, 513 at 130. Competition starting below that, 120 million for the buyers of the Tengu. Which is also not a bad chip at all. 120 million. Let's try to generate that on the charts. Is right here, 1 year low point by so much. I would say, yeah, Tengu, a couple makes the most sense out of all of them at this point for 120 million. It is basically a lack of demand, that oversupply that has now come, which I was constantly fearing throughout the summer, that is now showing up across all of these ships, driving these prices down. A lack of demand. Probably because of summer time as well, probably plays a factor here as well, is starting to create these buy opportunities for this week. The Tengu is there, the Svepel is, yeah, maybe there as well. I would love to lose that one, but those two super interesting, and definitely something in my opinion that you want to keep a very close eye on if you're looking for those buy opportunities in the Tech 3 ships. This is the time to look for those. Incredible week, and kind of what I was expecting. We've seen this pattern before, by the way. If you look at these charts, sometimes where we come from, especially well, no, not here, god damn it, but here at the Proteus, for instance, we've been here before, where we actually keep getting lower and lower and lower, and that September, October turned out to be the actual bottom. Not the summertime where you would expect it, but a bit after that. Maybe it's production coming online and people not using them in PvP just yet or something like that, but that time seems to be back. Tech tree definitely on my radar this week. And then for the extra product at 48.55, we'll take a look at some mining ships. 55 I said. We're just gonna take a look at some of the mining ships this week. Considering the kind of volumes that we're seeing, the mineral prices, I am curious to see what those are doing. So we're going for, is it mining barges actually first? Let's do that. And that is the Tech 1 market. So the Coveter here selling for 20 million ISK, bars at 18 million ISK, obviously below average, close to a 1 year low point. Here is the Procurer, same thing, super cheap at the moment. Retriever, same thing here, close to 1 year low point at 17.5 million on average, 17 million for the buyers, 18.4 million. So this means that it's even more buyers that are winning out. So if you want to grab a Retriever, 17.5 million, which is still almost a million below the sell orders, and you'll actually grab it without too much hassle here. Very interesting in my opinion that we've got this major supply, you know, which obviously is going to make Tech 1 ships super cheap, but that we don't see lots of demand. So again, there's not a lot of destruction happening in the mining ships or anything like that. They're not being massively targeted, and as a result, they are very inexpensive in the Tech 1s. Next up, we've got the Tech 2s though, and here is the Hulk still selling for 337 million, 318 for the buyers. Decent demand. Nothing too crazy in supply right there. Bit below average price, but not by too much. The Mackinac next, that one is actually below average. That's pretty obvious. Here we've got 265 for the sellers, 249 for the buyers. A bit more margin, a bit less demand as well. And then look at that, price below average at the moment. For the Mackinac, still nothing like a cratering of the price or anything like that either. So definitely something that that is affordable. And then the Skiff also under pressure at the tail end here, currently selling for 246, buyers at 202. That is below average as well. So we do see that the Tech 2 ship prices seem to be under pressure a little bit as well. The Hulk is holding strong. And then of course we also have the Orca. Let's take a look at that baby. What is that going for? 1 year low point. Well, coming from that at this point, we are talking Orcas for 711 million ISK, buyers at 668, and I'm personally a little bit surprised that despite these 1 year low prices, I mean, normally 750 and above is definitely possible, that the blueprint copies that I'm making are still commanding a very high price of close to 20 million ISK. So it's definitely, in my opinion, that the Orca for Highsec is in the meta. It's a great ship to mine in. It's more sturdy, more HP. It's got a bigger ore bay, and with the drones it can compete with any of the other mining ships out there, except of course for the Rorcal, which I mean we can try, but I don't think you've got any results for that here in Chita. Nobody's selling. You don't really get enough information to make looking at the ship worth it. So it's mostly for, I would say, Highsec mining there. Most Tech 2 ships are a bit below average, except for the... God damn it. That's not where I needed to be then. Hulk, it is, right? Mining barges, exhumers, yeah, except for the Hulk. The Hulk is holding decently strong at more than 330 million ISK, but... you know, 2 Hulks, you've pretty much got an Orca covered. So that is, I think, the mining ship that you should be shooting for. Not only is it as good as any of those, the Hulk will have a better yield, but I think that the cargo, the lower cargo means that you then need to have an Orca present to dump everything into and things like that. Yeah, and the Orca is so close to it. Just ease of use is there, very cheap, very affordable at the moment, and a great mining ship. I feel personally like that meta has has completely switched. The Tech 1 mining ships are almost out of the picture. Also 1 year low points, just like with the Orca, that's because of the minerals. But why spend the money on a flimsy Tech 2 ship? If you need that better yield, then that means that you're disregarding any tank and you do become vulnerable to a gank or a smart bomb attack or something like that. When you've got this ship with so much more HP, ability to boost, and a and drones that can compete with the other mining ships out there, this is still my go-to mining ship as well, especially for solo. Absolutely love it. And yeah, super affordable at the moment, despite the fact that blueprint copies are still expensive for this one. And yeah, that's it for this EVE talk, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.